A genetic secret hidden in their DNA for 1,500 years has finally been revealed. For centuries, the samurai stood as the living symbol of Japan. Warriors forged in isolation, shaped by a culture that owed nothing to the outside world. Their code, their weapons, their discipline, all of it seemed to rise from a single ancient source, deep in the Japanese islands. But the evidence points somewhere else entirely. What geneticists have pulled from ancient bones buried across Japan does not describe an isolated warrior class. It describes a fusion, a population assembled across thousands of years, each new arrival crossing the sea and permanently altering the people who would one day carry swords and govern a nation. The samurai did not descend from a single ancient bloodline. Their roots run at least 3 layers deep. The earliest people to inhabit the Japanese archipelago were the Jomon, hunter-gatherers whose presence on the islands stretches back more than 10,000 years. They worked the coastlines, moved through dense inland forests, and fired clay into vessels that predate almost every other pottery tradition on Earth. Their genetic signature was unlike anything else in East Asia, a lineage so long separated from mainland populations that it had become wholly its own. Small in number, but extraordinarily resilient, they endured for millennia and left a cultural mark that outlasted empires. For thousands of years, the Jomon were the only story Japan had. That changed roughly 2,300 years ago, when a new population crossed from the Korean peninsula. The Yayoi carried wet rice farming, metalworking, and a social organization built around hierarchy and land. Genetically, they were closer to the populations of Korea and northern China than to the people they encountered on the islands. Their expansion was gradual but transformative. Communities reorganized around agriculture. Territories hardened. Authority began concentrating in the hands of the few. The ancestry of modern Japanese people draws from both of these populations. But neither one explains what came next. Sometime between the 3rd and 6th centuries Common Era, the archaeological record changes register entirely. This is the Kofun period, named for the monumental burial mounds raised for a new warrior elite. Excavations of these sites have uncovered horse fittings, iron weapons, bronze mirrors, and armor of a kind that had not previously existed on the islands. A ruling class had emerged that was more militarized, more politically consolidated, and more oriented toward the continent than anything that had come before. For a long time, the debate centered on whether this shift was cultural or demographic. Had new ideas arrived, or new people? Ancient DNA has now closed that debate. Genomic analysis of Kofun-era skeletal remains shows a 3rd ancestral component entering the Japanese population during this period, one genetically distinct from both the Jomon and the Yayoi. Its origin traces to the East Asian mainland, with the strongest affinities pointing toward the Korean peninsula and northern China. This was not an exchange of pottery styles or farming techniques. It was a movement of people, entire family lines, and emergent elites transplanting themselves across the water and taking root at the top of a society in transition. The transformation that archaeologists can see in the burial mounds was not adopted from a distance. It came with the people who built them. And those people brought horses. Prior to the Kofun period, horses left almost no trace in the Japanese archaeological record. Their arrival changed the nature of warfare completely. Combat tactics shifted toward mounted engagements. Armor was redesigned. Clan-based military hierarchies built around the horse began determining who held regional power. The animal was more than a weapon. It was an emblem of a new kind of authority that had not previously existed on these islands. Those mounted warriors were the foundation on which the samurai were eventually built. The horse itself points toward an even deeper origin. Mounted warrior culture was not an East Asian invention. It emerged from the vast grasslands of the Eurasian steppe and traveled outward in every direction. The Scythians had already demonstrated centuries earlier what a horse-based military culture could accomplish across an entire continent, and the Huns would later drive that point from Central Asia to the edges of Rome. The warrior traditions that reshaped Japan were connected to this much older and much larger current of human movement. The samurai would eventually refine that tradition into something entirely their own, without ever knowing how far back its origins reached. This does not make the samurai less Japanese. It makes their story considerably larger than anyone assumed. By the late 8th century, the imperial court in Kyoto retained its ceremonial authority, while real power drained steadily into the provinces. Armed clans filled the vacuum, competing for territory and building private forces trained in mounted combat. The most capable of these fighters became indispensable, then hereditary, then a class unto themselves. The samurai treated their family histories as instruments of legitimacy. Descent from imperial lineages, noble houses, and divine figures was asserted, recorded, and defended. But the biological record running beneath those documented genealogies was considerably more tangled. Alliances were sealed through marriage. Promising fighters from outside a clan's bloodline were absorbed into it. Rival families were defeated and then incorporated. Across generations, the genetic profile of the warrior class accumulated everything that had already shaped the islands: the deep Jomon substrate, the agricultural Yayoi layer, and the continental Kofun component that had arrived alongside horses and a new conception of power. The samurai were not a fixed bloodline passed intact through the centuries. They were the cumulative result of everything Japan had absorbed. By the time the Tokugawa shogunate formalized the social order in the 17th century, samurai occupied the apex of a rigid hierarchy. Their swords and topknots marked them as categorically distinct from farmers, craftsmen, and merchants. The mythology of the pure warrior caste was at its most elaborate, and the gap between that mythology and the genetic reality underneath it had never been greater. The genetic record has never confirmed the idea of a pure, unchanging people. Japan is no exception. The Jomon worked these islands before anyone else arrived. The Yayoi reorganized them around the harvest. The Kofun migrants brought horses, continental weapons, and the social architecture of a warrior elite. Each wave reshaped what it found without erasing it, adding another layer to a population that was always more composite than it appeared. The samurai were the final expression of that accumulation, disciplined, mythologized, and iconic, but assembled from a history of crossing, mixing, and transformation that extended far beyond the islands they defended. Their swords were forged in Japan. Their ancestry was forged somewhere much larger.